Hello! Today's stories come from r/Am I the Butthole? We have 5 stories, starting with Am I the butthole for saying I told you so when my wife got banned from seeing our grandson? My wife has been in constant contact with our daughter in law, our son's wife, about plenty of things. Their very recent argument ensued after my wife kept insisting on being present in the delivery room despite getting a resounding no. My wife was having none of it, and after my son and his wife changed hospitals to throw my wife off after she threatened to barge into the room, she eventually found out, I didn't tell her, and got very mad. I told her to stop and think, because if she keeps this up, she will lose all chances to see her grandbaby. She told me off and went to make a huge scene at the hospital my daughter-in-law was at. It did not end well, and my wife came home crying hysterically after getting chewed out by our son and kicked out of the hospital. Things remained tense till my son called to invite me to see the baby for the first time. He did not invite my wife, which sent her into a mental breakdown. I had an argument with her after she tried to guilt me into staying with her and shame my son for keeping his mom away from her grandbaby, but I told her, I told you so, and said that she had plenty of opportunities to get right with our daughter-in-law, but she blew them away because of her stubbornness. She started yelling about how unsupportive and cruel I was, just like our son to be siding against her instead of defending her and staying home with her when our son banned her from meeting her grandbaby. I went anyway, and she kept arguing about me taking the wrong side instead of defending her. I feel bad for her, but at the same time, I think she was being irrational and made this a competition despite knowing how our son and his wife felt about her behavior. Not the butthole. OP's wife needs a reality check. Sounds to me like OP's son has his priorities right and is drawing a firm and very reasonable line, I might add, to support his wife. Second story is, am I the butthole for refusing to see other options for a girl and pressing charges for what she did to my son's car? I'm a 39-year-old male and my son is 17. His name is Bryce, and he dated our neighbor, Lana, 17-year-old female, for a year. They broke up mid-January for reasons I don't know. I won't sugarcoat this. I never liked Lana. She always seemed a little unhinged, controlling, and aggressive. She's always demanding Bryce's attention, and there were quite a few times when she showed up on our house out of nowhere, whether it was 7 a.m. or 11 p.m., because Bryce wasn't answering his phone, screaming and calling him a cheater when it wasn't like that. The thought of our son getting abused by his girlfriend made us worried so much. My wife and I tried to talk him out of that relationship. We said how that it wasn't normal nor healthy. We didn't want to force the breakup because we feared Lana would lash out at him, so we tried to do it in a sneaky way. We don't know if it worked, but they ended up breaking up. He said that after he broke up with her, Lana didn't contact him, which was weird because he expected her to go nuts. But I told him that if fate didn't give him crap, he better not tease it. Now, the problem is that we bought my son a car for Christmas. Nothing fancy, but enough to get him to school, his job, and eventually college. He parks it in our driveway outside our home. Ever since the month began, we had been finding scratches all over the car. We know Lana was doing it, but since it was minimal, my son decided not to do anything, even if we could prove that it was her. We've got CCTV. Still, something smelled bad for me, so I decided to switch one of the cameras facing his car directly, just in case. Well, 2 weeks ago, we got up and we found my son's car covered in a lot of crap. Paint, glue, feathers, confetti. The door handles were wrecked, flat tires, paint all over the windows, you get the picture. Bryce and my wife were so distraught. We called the police and I handed them the CCTV that showed Lana and her brother, 23-year-old male, destroying my son's car. We pressed charges, and needless to say, Lana's brother went straight to jail. But since she's still a minor, her parents want to make a deal, but I refused. I don't think she should get a way out. Before the police were here, she was laughing her butt off, and she tried to play it cool. If she thought this was funny, then she's old enough to face the consequences. My wife and I want to stand our ground. They said they'll buy my son a better car and put Lana on therapy, but it's not enough. Am I the butthole? I'm with OP on this one. The fact that she was smug and laughing about it means she feels zero remorse about what she did. Life lessons are definitely bountiful in this story. Third story is, am I the butthole for telling my husband that I was disappointed in the gift he had for my son's 16th birthday? Background. I have been married to my husband, Jack, for 3 years. I have a 16-year-old son from my previous marriage, and Jack has an 18-year-old son from his previous marriage as well. My stepson and my son aren't close, and they only see each other while they visit. But everyone is happy with these arrangements, and there are rarely any issues. My stepson's 18th birthday was a couple of months ago. I wasn't at the party since his mom hosted, but Jack told me he bought him a car because he's been needing it since he has a disability and will be going to college. I saw the pictures. The car looked nice. Now my son's 16th birthday took place this past week. My son and I were both excited for the gift Jack said he'd bring, and I hinted to my son that it would most likely be a car, just like the one his stepbrother got recently. It turned out we were wrong because at the party, Jack's gift for my son was actually a gaming console. My son got so upset that he went to his room and shut the door mid-party. Everyone noticed something was wrong and left shortly. Jack looked confused this entire time and asked what the deal was. I asked if he really didn't know, and he just stared. I told him that my son was expecting something like a car as a gift. Jack asked why, and I told him because my stepson got one for his 18th birthday recently. I bluntly told him that my son was rightfully disappointed, and so was I, in this gift and really thought it was unfair, especially since my son told his friends he was getting a car from his stepdad. Jack argued about the difference in circumstances, saying his son needs the car to drive to college while my son doesn't need it, and besides, he doesn't have a disability like his stepbrother and can walk or commute. Also said I shouldn't have assumed it'd be a car, and I messed up by hinting this to my son. I couldn't help notice the difference in treatment. I let him know that no matter how he tries to explain his reasons, my son will always feel like he's less than his stepbrother, in a way, and what happened now will make it worse. Even between the stepbrother, not just him and my son. Jack called me unbelievable, and that I should feel ashamed, then rushed out. He's expecting me to get involved and ease things between him and my son, but I decided to give my son time to process this. Am I the butthole for what I said? Yes. This had disaster written all over it from the start. As an aside, I think a great rule of thumb in life is to maintain relatively low expectations. It really helps in avoiding disappointment. Next up, am I the butthole for leaving my husband passed out on our lawn? I'm a 30-year-old female and my husband is 32. We have a little boy together, he's 4. Our property has no fence. I was inside, my husband was sitting on the porch watching our son, and our son was playing on the lawn. All of a sudden, I heard my kid wailing and I rushed outside. He had fallen and scraped his knee. I saw my husband head over before me, which makes sense because he was closer than I was. But when he squatted down to help, he fainted. The exact timing is unclear. I don't know if he squatted and then fainted or fainted mid-squat. I just know he was passed out on the grass by the time I got there. My husband is squeamish. He doesn't like gore, and blood makes him uncomfortable. I knew this when we dated, and I knew it when we married. He's fainted before. We dated in college, and he faints at vomit as well, and he usually comes to shortly after. We've been together 10 years, and I've seen him faint maybe 3 times, including this instance. Anyway, he passed out on the grass, and my son was still screaming, so I picked him up and carried him inside. When I was dressing his wound, my husband came in a couple minutes later, angry that I left him unconscious and unattended on our lawn. We don't live in a dangerous neighborhood. We're friends with our neighbors. He was dressed for the weather because he was sitting on the porch outside anyway, and we live in an area where the climate doesn't fluctuate too much, so I didn't feel there was a risk of hypothermia or heat stroke. It was maybe 70 degrees and clear, which is why we let our son play outside. It only takes a couple minutes to dress my son's wound and kiss it better, so I would have checked on my husband shortly after, but my husband says I should never leave someone unconscious and unattended. I agree with his point generally, but if there's only 2 of us present and our son is hurt, I don't see what the big deal is. He thinks I should have left our son with him while I go inside to get the bandages and dress his wound on the lawn, or take my son inside, get the bandages, and bring him back out to dress his wound on the lawn. I guess the last idea makes sense, but as a mom with a crying kid, I didn't think about it that deeply. Am I the butthole? I kind of think OP is the butthole. I don't think her husband was that angry since he was really reasonable in suggesting some alternate solutions. But bruises and scrapes are kind of par for the course at 4. I mean, did she even check to see if her husband was breathing before she went inside? What if it wasn't the fainting thing that she saw a whopping 2 times before this? And now for our final story. Am I the butthole for imposing my culture even though I thought I was just being nice? Even though I, a 23-year-old female, am American, my parents are immigrants and therefore I have a different cultural upbringing than most. One thing that was hammered into my head from a young age was to always bring a small gift when visiting anyone's house. It doesn't matter if it's family or friends, or that one person you kind of know but don't really like, bringing something is a must. My boyfriend, 28-year-old male, and I have been dating for almost 4 years now, and since we both work from home, he suggested we make dinner with his parents a weekly thing, since we haven't been able to see each other much for obvious reasons. I love his parents, so obviously I agreed. Every week, I made sure to bring something small to show my appreciation for them cooking for us, always using my own money. A small bottle of wine, their favorite dessert, some flowers, etc., and they always thank me for it. This has been going on for a few months and absolutely didn't notice anything out of the ordinary until yesterday when my boyfriend and I were preparing to head over. I'd gotten a cute vase of daffodils since luckily I'd found some in bloom and my boyfriend's mom really loves them. But my boyfriend suddenly got really mad and asked why I kept bringing stuff over every week like his parents were a charity case. Honestly, I got super confused and asked him what the problem was, and that I've always done this with everyone, including his friends, since we met. That it was a cultural thing. But then he got even madder and told me to stop imposing my culture on everyone, and it's weird since I'm white. At that point, I didn't feel like going anywhere with him and just gave him the flowers and went for a walk while he drove over to dinner by himself. After he came home, he still had the flowers, which he gave to me and told me he was sorry, but his parents really were super annoyed with me constantly bringing stuff over, like they can't take care of themselves. Later on, I got a text from his dad asking me to not come over for dinner anymore. Now my boyfriend's giving me the cold shoulder unless I give his parents a huge apology. But I really, truly don't feel like I'm in the wrong for trying to be nice to them. Am I the butthole? Quick edit, I didn't realize you could edit posts directly, but I'm in a hurry to convince him to let me go over to his parents' house. I did post a brief update and FAQ in my most recent comment. Update, I'm feeling extremely overwhelmed right now and just making a quick comment because all of you are being so nice. Sat my boyfriend down after dragging him off his game and grilled him about what was happening, but he said I was being crazy when I started all this and to just let us write a text to his parents apologizing. I said no, and that we would go over to apologize, but he started freaking out, which was the final straw. He's doing everything to get me to stay home, but I'm going over and sorting this out since I tried calling anyway, but the number's out of order. Some more responses before I leave. I'm so sorry I can't answer everyone. My parents are from the Caribbean and he's very American, but he and his family have never been racist or anything before. They are actually much more well off than me, and my gifts are never expensive, since I pay for them on my own, which is why I'm now very suspicious of them behaving this way. The reason only the dad texted me is because his parents aren't super tech savvy and share a simple phone he picked out for them. I know there's a bit of an age gap, but I pursued the relationship myself because he asked me out casually at work as a frequent customer, and I accepted. Not the butthole. Definitely not the butthole. My goodness, what is up with these people? I really wanted to find out what the outcome was. Thankfully, I checked again while editing, and OP just posted an update and conclusion to our story. Update. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for the overwhelming support and replies on my first post. I'm looking forward to going over to everyone's houses for dinner, and I'll be sure to bring all the things you said you liked. Many flower lovers out there. I'm now also apparently the daughter-in-law to a lot of hopeful parents that replied as well, so I hope I can deliver on expectations. After my last update, I told my boyfriend I was sick and tired of him dancing around the issue with his parents, and I was going to go over to their house whether he liked it or not. At this point, I think he realized that whatever he was doing had backfired, so he sat down all angry and told me he'd explain. I sat, and he told me that he'd done something very spur of the moment, and that he texted me from his dad's phone, then blocked the number, but begged me to listen. That he just needed to get his parents off me for a while and to not leave. Apparently, his parents had started hinting at him about marriage since my boyfriend and I talked a lot about it. I fully expected to marry him, as I said in another comment, and was honestly expecting a proposal in late spring since that's when we met. 4 years dating didn't bother me, but I was getting excited to settle down. However, my boyfriend apparently realized that he absolutely didn't want to commit to anything and wanted to experiment and have fun, since I wasn't being fun anymore. Honestly, that just made me cry since we were each other's firsts for everything, and usually very good at communicating our needs. His grand plan was to get him mad at me, so I would beg for forgiveness and then he'd only accept an open relationship as an answer. Absolutely brilliant plan, I know. He made up his parents getting mad, but didn't expect me to blow off dinner completely, and it's like hitting a jackpot. His words, not mine. He went over for dinner, hid the flowers, and said we'd gotten into a huge fight, but he was going to fix it. But I needed space. After he confessed all this, he said he was very sorry, but really didn't want to miss out on new experiences when he was still young, and what I consider an open relationship, but pretend ours was strained with his parents so they wouldn't get suspicious. And I laughed. I laughed his butt right out the door and told him absolutely not and to leave me alone while I packed, because I wanted to have some new experiences too. He never stopped begging me to stay, but I left to sleep at a friend's. After calming down for a few days, I cemented the breakup and finally actually went over to his parents. My ex-boyfriend's dad never even noticed the phone missing, but still apologized, and his mom was a mess. I did and still love them and will eat dinner there without him as often as I can. I won't lie that I'm sad about 4 years down the drain, but that's life. And if that was my ex's best possible plan, then I dodged the bullet by a mile. I don't have much to say on this one. I kind of figured it was a lie and the parents had no idea, but I never would have guessed why. OP was lucky she found out what kind of character he had before getting hitched. Doesn't matter what lifestyle you have, I don't think you want to share it with someone who's that selfish and that manipulative. If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.